Hi YouTube, this is Darkon633 and we're taking a look at the Titan Returns Titan class Fortress Maximus with Cerebros and the Emissary, also known as Spike from the G1 cartoon. It's kind of interesting that they changed the name to Emissary, since technically the name of the Emissary is based on the form that Cerebros' body takes when you attach it to Fortress Maximus in the original G1 toy. But anyways, we'll now take a look at the box first. This is actually a really huge box, and it's actually the second largest figure that I've reviewed, since the other large figure I reviewed was Devastator. So this is this year's giant release from Hasbro. Just trying to slide the box out without things falling. Can be a bit tricky due to the fact the box is extremely huge. On the front it shows a picture of Fortress Maximus. On the side, which we'll get to now, shows a look at basically just the contents of how the figure is like, and also the Fortress mode showing there. And on the back, which we'll get to now, it just shows how it transforms into the different modes. It technically has multiple steps, since the toy itself has around 15 steps as stated here, but Cerebros itself has about 5 steps, and then another 1 step obviously where the head itself. So that's pretty much it for the box otherwise, and it just promotes some of the other figures. So now we're just going to quickly pan ahead and look at the figure specifically. And here we have 4 bags out of the packaging. We're going to look at the base mode first. Now this is technically the battle station mode as seen in the G1 cartoon. Also, it's been seen in the Marvel comics and the other G1 comics, and it is more prevalent in the G1 Headmasters cartoon in Japan. So it's a pretty good rendition of the battle station mode. Unfortunately, it does have a little problems with the legs. While the legs are a lot more supportive than what I've seen with Metroplex, it's not enough to support it. As you can see, it does flop just a little bit when trying to pick it up in the air. So you do need to hold it in 2 different locations in order to get this flying technically. The main components of the set is a little gun that's inside the chest compartment here for Cerebros and for the battle station mode and so on. This little tank solid piece, like, it doesn't really do anything, it doesn't really connect or anything, it's just a solid piece in different colors. And obviously the main component of Cerebros. So those are the main components of 4 bags outside of the box. It doesn't make sound, so that's what you heard there. Anyways, technically what you're supposed to do in this mode is that you transform Cerebros into the Emissary, because in the original G1 toy, this is what the Emissary was specifically. Make sure you take off what they call Emissary, which is the head. Technically it's supposed to be Spike. But anyways, we're just going to attach this into the component there, and then it'll form just some kind of little battle station piece here. So, trying to get that into place. It is a little bit tricky to get in there due to the way that the legs are designed. Once you do, it will stay in snugly. So I'm just going to move things around and then slide it down. Trying to get this together. Okay. So now we're going to try plugging it back in once again. It should actually plug in. There we go. So this is what the mode basically is. Now to transfer it into city mode, in this mode obviously there really is no point of articulation, since it's just basically supposed to be a giant battle station. To transform it into city mode, what you're going to do is keep it like this and just turn it around. Now what the main mode is supposed to look like is that you're supposed to pull these to the side and just turn the entire station around. And this is what is promoted as the city mode. Now, personally, I don't think it looks really nice this way, and I've seen other fan modes pretty much show that you take this, turn it around. It'd be nice. It'll be better to have the red guns facing the outer direction. So turn just the leg component around, the very loud ratchets, and you just push it up. So now it's a little bit more reminiscent of the G1 way of changing it into the city mode. In the G1 version, it was actually able to bend just a little bit more and keep it a little bit more together. But for this toy, this is decent enough to keep into city mode. It does maintain the same opening pieces like Metroplex, so that is why those components open. And here is the main city mode. You can pull this out if you wished. So now you got a little tank, well, not a tank, but you got this little turret sitting out here. Then you can put things like the Titan Masters. You could put, maybe you wanted Wheelie over here. Just get them all over together. Just the comparison here is, I guess, Galvatron, since this is the only Voyager from Titan Returns I currently own. And you can pretty much get a fair idea what you can do in this city mode, and it looks pretty nice and it does what it needs to do okay, I guess. These little components on the side, you can pull up, and these will be able to connect to the leaders into their battle station modes, but I do not currently own any of the Titan Returns leaders, so I can't really show that off at the moment. So, that's pretty much the main thing you could do in city mode. You can put a vehicle in here if you wished. Unlike the G1 toy where it actually had the whole mechanism with the ladder to go inside and you pull up the ladder using a crank and then they were able to slide down, this obviously does not have that, but it's still an okay city mode. It's definitely not the most epic city mode I've ever seen, but I guess it does okay. What you can do is, if you wanted to, you could just take Spike or the Emissary, just transform it. Articulation-wise, it's exactly the same we've seen with other Transformers on the other Titan Master releases. Luckily for my Emissary, it's actually a lot tighter than some of the other ones I've had up to this point. And you can just make him sit in the little turret over here. So now you got him manning the station. So you can do a lot of stuff in this mode. You can possibly take out the cannons to the side. Same thing if you were laying it flat and so on. These little components are a separate piece, but that's about it. It is a bit weird since I think these are supposed to be landing platforms for planes and so on, but in the original toy it actually had a full ramp designed to go down, so there is no other ramps besides the main one up there. But that's pretty much it for city mode. So while Fortress Maximus was mainly marketed for city mode in the original G1 toy, it's not as much here. This time they focused a lot more in the robot mode. Now the Transformer is a robot mode. Similar to what you do with Metroplex, you just move a lot of components and get them together. So we're going to close this off and make sure that he is standing. So we're just going to close off these little pieces there. And then what you're going to do is take the entire component and make sure that he stands up. So in terms of transformation, there isn't a whole lot going on. It's a lot of components. All you need to do is just move it around. But it's still really tight and does take some getting used to due to the fact that he is still quite heavy in the overall design of the figure. We'll slide these around. Very loud ratchets. Push these together. Like this. Let's close up the there. So now we got him standing. And we will now pan to it on the upper part of the transformation. Now that we moved up to the upper part of the body, we will now finish off the transformation. Similar to what you do with the G1 toy, you take these chest panels and snap them into the inner chest area like so. This one doesn't snap in as well as the other side for some reason on mine. Just going to move the arms down. Then take this piece and snap it into the back. So now we got the main body of Fortress Maximus pretty much ready. We're just going to move the hands into position since they are a little bit off now. Okay, so here we go. And now we're going to look at Cerebros itself before we go on to the rest of the transformation, including attaching the head and so on. To transform Cerebros back into robot, since we mostly got into emissary mode, we're going to push down the feet and the heels, snap these together, and now we got it pretty much set up in order to get it into robot mode. Now the sounds are a bit finicky due to the fact that the button is very easy to press. The main button is up here on the shoulders, and it pretty much hits it as well once it goes into Fort mode. So we're going to plug in Cerebros' head, and now, unlike the G1 toy, this one is definitely much more reminiscent of the design of Cerebros and Fortress Maximus from the Rebirth, rather than from the G1 Headmasters cartoon. As you can see here, it's the main Cerebros head from the body. Articulation for this figure is ball joints at the shoulders, ball joints at the elbows. No wrist articulation though. He has no waist articulation, but he's got ratchets at the hips. Not the tightest ratchets, but it's pretty decent. Also got swivels at the thighs, about 90-degree elbows as mentioned. The feet can pivot a bit, and the head is on the normal Headmaster joints we've seen so far, so that's pretty good. Now, as shown earlier, we will press the buttons on his shoulders in order to activate the multiple sounds that Cerebros has in this mode. He has more sounds in Fort mode, but in the main Cerebros mode, here we go.
Cerebros.
And that's pretty much it. There is very limited sounds when it comes to just main Cerebros mode. It's a lot more robotic than I would have liked, but I can understand why they didn't go with the full-on regular voice, but it would have been nice to actually maybe had a voice to just make it sound normal rather than being robotic. But we will take out the gun, which is hidden in the compartment as shown earlier, and this is actually the gun that can be used by Cerebros himself. So we're going to pull it out, just making sure that the figure doesn't fall in the process. So here we go. Snap up the chest compartment, and he can carry it like a regular blaster. So this is technically the blaster made for Cerebros. And as a bonus, there's something cool that I've noticed, is that you can take the G1 sword that came with the G1 version of Cerebros, and you can plug it into his hand. As mentioned earlier, you can take the sword from the original G1 toy, and it fits really well, and I think it's a lot more proportionate than the one seen with the Takara version, so on, since the sword really wasn't all that big compared to its body. Forgot to show earlier that this set does include a character card, as normal, and he's got some really good stats. As you can see, it's pretty much infinite on all of them, so that's pretty cool. Now, we will now take Cerebros and transform it into his head mode. Unlike other Transformers, he is pretty much just a head. He doesn't have any vehicle mode or anything on its own, so that's about it. But before that, we're going to show a little comparison with the sizes next to Cerebros. I'm just going to put a few figures here, just as a little comparison to see what scale he is. So as you can see here, it's actually a pretty good scale. It's not quite a Voyager, but it's definitely taller than a Deluxe, so it's an in-between scale, so that's pretty interesting. We'll now pan back in order to finish off the transformation. Okay. So anyways, we will now take Cerebros. You can take off Spike or the Emissary if you wish, but it's okay to keep it on there. Just like the G1 toy, you do not need to use the head to combine with Fort Max, but we're just going to move the shoulders together so that it looks like this. Make sure that the hands, it doesn't really matter what you do with the hands, but it's better off if you just leave it like this and turn the hands around. We're going to close out the heel pieces, and then push these together on both sides. It's a little more loose than I would like it. It's kind of all loose all over, and it kind of annoys me, but it's not the worst I've seen. You're going to pull the ears, and even though you probably heard it earlier in the video, basically the transformation sound comes from this. When you move this up and down, it will make the transformation sound. So here we go. This time I didn't do it for some reason. There we go. For some reason it's a bit jammed right now. And then basically what you're going to do is plug this in. And there we have G1 Fort Max, well, Titan Returns Fort Max, in its full robot mode. Just as a comparison, we have Generations Metroplex here to the side, and we're just going to take a little size comparison between the two. So, he is taller than the mold, even though it is basically the same mold, minus obviously a lot of the heavy retool parts, but it does really nicely, and it looks different enough to not quite be the same design as Metroplex. So I appreciate that. In this mode, he can use the guns that is on his legs as his main artillery guns. So it's kind of interesting that they actually hid weapons on the body rather than just making separate weapons this time around. So it just uses the standard mushroom peg. We're going to pull up the hand, pull down this part here, and open up his hand and plug it in. So it's about the same thing you would do with Metroplex. I've checked that this definitely holds better than Metroplex's gun, so I appreciate that Hasbro did better this time around than what we've seen with Metroplex. What you can do also is that you could take this and plug it onto the back like a shoulder cannon. Basically what you could do is take it here and plug it onto a little hole there. And there we have him with a shoulder cannon. So that's cool. Just going to snap this back into place. And since it's going to make up the sounds most likely by pressing the button by accident a couple times, so we're just going to quickly go over the sounds that Fort Max has. In this SDCC version, he does have an extra sound which is reminiscent of the G1 cartoon, since it actually has the theme song, or at least a portion of the theme song, in the sound box. But this version does not feature that, so it's pretty much the main difference when it comes to sound anyways for that version. We now go through the sounds. Basically, when you press this button, it will activate the sounds and the lights in the head as if you're just using Cerebros. There we go. Sometimes it does that, so. It's not the most secure, but it should work now, so there we go. You need to put a little bit of force on the button in order to work sometimes, but it doesn't work. And that's about the sounds. There isn't a whole lot of variety of sounds you can hear from it, but I guess it's cool that it has it. In this mode, he has pretty decent articulation, actually. He's got ratchets in the shoulders, which are really tight and loud. Now we're moving and forward. He does have swivels at the elbows, and also ratchets at the elbows as well. His hands are articulated as well. You can swivel, bend a little bit due to transformation, but you do need to move in the hands a bit in order to get it into place. And he does have individual points of articulation in the fingers, but no individual in the links of the fingers itself. He does have waist articulation, which is really tight, loud. Ratchets at the hips, outward movement, and forward. It does do that sometimes, similar to what happens with Metroplex. He does have swivels at the thighs. This piece likes to open up a lot. Ratchets at the knees, and his feet can pivot a bit due to transformation. So it actually has a high range of movement for a very large scale figure. Personally, I think it's a lot better than what we've seen in Metroplex. Metroplex and many copies of Metroplex suffer from major QC issues which caused it to topple over and have a lot of balancing issues, which is not prevalent here actually in the Fort Max mold. And I'm actually impressed that Hasbro, over time, has fixed the problems which were seen with the Metroplex mold. I highly recommend picking up Titan Returns Fortress Maximus, and it's a really good collectible in order to keep it in your display for the rest of the Headmasters. I think it works really nicely in conjunction with a lot of the other figures in the line by attaching the base modes, using the Titan Returns vehicles such as Wheelie and so on. So basically, it just has a lot of play value going for it. And if not for the $150 price tag, I would say that it's a pretty good toy for a lot of kids today as well. But I highly recommend picking this up. I got this from Hasbrotoyshop since I missed out on the sale using a coupon at Toys R Us, so I decided to get a Hasbrotoyshop and pretty much got it for the same price I would get there. But anyways, I highly recommend picking this up as mentioned earlier, and hopefully Scorponok will look just as good, if not better. Anyways, please comment, subscribe, and check out Hero Taco and Hero Club. Please check me on Twitter under DarkOn633, and don't forget to comment and subscribe, and check down the other channels down below. I'll be back with more Transformers reviews in the future, but for now, I'll be seeing you too. Bye.